Woohoo!
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another monthly live stream with Whiskey and Lipstick, another ladies' night. I am Sarah from the Whiskey Crusaders. We have Theresa, Canadian Whiskey Smith, and Erica from the Rock Gut Review. And tonight we have two very special guests that we are extremely excited about. We have Marcia Likarish down below me from Iron Root. She is the mother of Texas whiskey, Mama Likarish. She was also our first actual guest 2 years ago, and so we're very excited to have her back with us tonight.
Happy to be here again.
And then over here underneath Erica, we have Nancy, the Nose Fraley. And if you don't know Nancy, then I don't know why you're here. You're about to find out who Nancy is if you don't know Nancy. And my cats are over here going crazy over Joe Mag bottles that I have over here ready to be drank. But yes, we have Nancy, and Nancy is a awesome blender and has worked with several different distilleries that you may know, and we will talk about them more here in just a little bit. Theresa?
Yeah. So, I guess if you haven't started drinking yet, then I'm giving you permission because it's Sunday night. We got to have some fun. I am pulling out one of my bottles of Wyoming whiskey. This one is a single cask. It's the first Wild Rose bottling that was done exclusively for Alberta. And it's just so tasty.
Number on it. Oh, sorry.
The cask number is 1514.
Gotcha.
So, does that mean anything specific to you, Nancy?
Well, gosh, I should have been over getting I've got Wyoming whiskey.
Yeah,
I just didn't bring it out.
That would have been a very, very early bottling, probably from 2012 or 13. So I probably picked that out. That's a possible.
So there's a little step in. If you don't know, Nancy does blend for Wyoming whiskey.
Yes.
Nancy, I know I mentioned it in a Facebook post, but I got to try a pre-Nancy bottle of Wyoming whiskey.
Did Ed do that?
Thanks to Ed.
Sorry.
From the Rock Gut Review. And I'm just going to say it is so good that you joined them and fixed their whiskey because it tasted like soap and wet moldy cardboard, and it was disgusting. And I'm just thankful that you joined the team and are working with them and making their whiskey good.
Do you know what batch it would have been,
Erica?
So I'll be honest, I hid it deep in our cupboard. I can definitely look for it. It'll take a minute. Ed recommended I bring it out and was like, yeah, you should compare so you can give like notes to Nancy about like how much you improved it. And I was like, let her work stand alone and don't make me suffer through what it was before.
Ed, you're watching.
First for you, Eric. That was a good statement.
Erica, what bottle was it that? I mean batch. Excuse me. That you're talking about that you had hidden away.
I actually have no clue. You know what? Give me a moment and I will proceed. But the one
Yeah,
I have right
find it.
now is 1840.
1840. Okay. So actually, I came on there in October, almost exactly this time in October 2014, but it took a long time to kind of turn the ship around. It was like turning the Titanic around, so to speak. So, what do you have, Sarah? What batch?
This is batch number 38.
Okay, yeah, I would have. I came in at batch 25, but because there were some stock issues, it took a while to kind of right the ship, as it were. So
yeah, so I don't know which.
This one's the one.
This one's been sitting in our cabinet for a little while. I do have a bunch of samples over hidden from when you were on the Whiskey Crusaders live stream and the stuff that you sent us. So, but I didn't dig those out because, well, I don't want to drink them all.
So I remember. So a friend of mine, what got me into Wyoming is that a friend and mentor of mine was the local rep up here, Jay Wheelock, and he was always talking about how you can have good bourbon and it doesn't have to come from Kentucky. So it was kind of neat. He actually, I worked a festival with him, and that was how I got paid. He's like, well, I could pay you cash, or I can give you a bottle of whiskey. And I'm like,
How much
I'll take the whiskey. So that's how I got my Wild Rose Country Wyoming whiskey. And I love it. Like, for me, my first time trying Wyoming, and it's pretty consistent across the board over the last few years. It smells like the prairies. It tastes like the prairies. And growing up in a very agricultural part of the world, I've spent summers at friends' farms and stood out there and played in the wheat fields and around the grain. And that is what Wyoming does for me. Is it kind of takes me back to being that kid, and
Yeah.
playing in the grain. Like, it's
Like-
this is childhood.
As one does. Oh, I love this. Yeah, my buddy compared the Wyoming to turpentine if it was made by Jimmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah,
those were early fermentation issues that carried over into distillation, and it took Wyoming whiskeys try to be as honest about that, and here's what happened, and blah blah blah. But we're finally like long past those days. So,
oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you for your work.
but worked hard on the fermentation and distillation side of things to make sure that kind of issue doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
So I am sorry that you had that anybody had a bad experience with that before.
And that was all Ed. Ed was pushing it on us too, and he recorded some of us as well. I haven't seen those videos yet, but he has a knack for bringing something awful to the Bastards Ball and getting reactions on film, and then making a
Oh God.
compilation of all of it and putting it out on the interwebs. So
I saved all this year.
I don't know how many he got this year.
We didn't
but-
bring anything bad this year, so I saved you guys.
except for the Wyoming whiskey.
That was the year before. I wasn't allowed to go that time.
Well, I will tell you this much. I got a bottle just at ADI, and if I could find anything I brought back from ADI, I would be in luck. And it was lovely. So I was really impressed with it, with the new bottle, and I'm sure it's one of the newest ones that you've just done, and it was great.
Yeah, that's a lot of work has been put into to get things in a much better place there. So
And you were just up there too, weren't you? Finishing up before the
yes.
season changes and it gets really bad.
Oh my God. Yeah, when I flew into Cody, and it was snowing. I mean, just like really heavy, and I was afraid that they were going to shut the mountain paths down that I take to get down there. But it was just wild weather. As you get at this time of year, and
Random.
so yeah, I'd gone before their barrel dormant season starts about this time of year when it gets so cold that the barrels just maturation completely shuts off until maybe April, May. So yeah, just kind of cut it at the last minute.
Gotta get everything barreled as soon as you can.
Yeah, but it blends together because historically we haven't been able to blend in the winter time. That should be changing soon because we'll have a heated warehouse where we can kind of bring the barrels up out of dormancy, after we harvest them.
That was going to be my next question, is if, because it's so cold up there and all the snow and everything, if they actually have temperature control.
No, that has not been anything that's happened in
warehouses up in Wyoming
just now. So we've got they're getting ready to build warehouse G and H now. And then one of the warehouses that's also going to be a kind of an updated bottling facility too is finally going to be heated. So like I was saying, in the winter time now we'll have the ability to take the barrels out and warm them up, but before they get bottled. So
I'm interested with that drastic change and then the slight warming of it to get them warmed back up does to the whiskey. Does it have a drastic effect to it, or?
Yeah, and that's I'm sure I'd love to hear Marcia's take on this in regard to Texas here in a little bit too, but I know for Wyoming that if you go from those dormant temps of like -10 in Fahrenheit, and then if you try and harvest those barrels and you try and blend it out and batch it, it tastes terrible. It's just, I mean, it's gross.
I can only
put it that way.
I can only imagine.
I think Nancy,
it's just.
Yeah. We always talk about that there's a life in that barrel, and you have your peaks and you have your troughs, and for the cold weather we'll pull it in the troughs. With us, we really watch. We of course have that type of the cold weather where we get down to where we really are not aging. Even because our warehouse is so well insulated that even when we had the big ice storms this year, it only got down to about 40 degrees for a while. But we also find, we fight it on the other side with when you get too much heat. When it gets, we don't like to harvest our barrels when it's in midsummer, because they seem to be thin. They seem to be have a lot of spice to them and a lot of heat to them. So right about now, when it starts getting down to that nice in between where it's going to be 75 degrees, 80 during the day, and the evenings are going to get down in the 50s. It seems to really be the points where we see where the body of the whiskey and the richness, this is when it seems like all of the work that the summer's been doing is now coming back into the barrel. And so that we definitely have times that we really see that we like what we see in the barrel much more than other times during the year.
So kind of around right now, going into like October, November-ish, where it's actually decent in Texas.
We're at our prime right now.
Yeah.
This is where we are pulling. We will pull a lot of our whiskeys. In fact, Nancy's going to get a kick out of this. I was out of town. I happened to be in North Carolina for the first time and had a phenomenal time out there with the whiskey witches and the people of North Carolina. But they had, when I came back, Jonathan had pulled something really interesting. Our hubris, Nancy, is our purple corn in European oak. And so what happened, that was our first favorite barrel. And we picked it out, and it was I remember the joy. We just loved that barrel, didn't we? And it was good. It won the best corn whiskey in the world. That one did. But so now they're up there, and Jonathan, last year there was a bottle that was released, and they called it Hazmat, right? And it was a Hubris Hazmat. Well, he had 3 Hubris Hazmats. And guess what? He said he tasted them, and the day he tasted them, they were as softer than the hazmat that you have, Sarah.
Yeah.
And he pulled him. He says, because he said,
Oh,
sometimes it's just the exact right date and sometimes day. And so wait till you taste them. It is fun.
I'm gonna drink on this one next. I actually just poured a little bit of Harbinger pick. That was a Galladay pick. I don't know.
You did a big good job with that one.
Huh?
Josh always does a good job when he did.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one it was. That it was either one or two, because I have a bottle of 3 from his what's it? Oh, the Evolution. Yeah, I'm not sure which one it was, but it's one of them, and they're all good. So.
Well, I've got a toast here first. I'm drinking something that's very dear to Nancy and I. And so today I picked out Likarish. Because I was in Nancy's, Jonathan, Robert, and I were in Nancy's living room, the one you see right there. And after a wonderful dinner and drinking old Armagnacs right there, Nancy says, let's start blending. And she grabbed the
That sounds like a party I want to be at.
Me too.
And she started putting all these wonderful things together. And the idea of doing the hubris and putting it into port and peat barrels, that was the night it was hatched. And we did another one with Armagnac, right? Yes. We had our ideas there. And so I have my Icarus that I always say cheers to Nancy. And we did, and next weekend we will release the Iron Root with the Armagnac, the apotheosis for the first time. And both of those ideas, we just kind of, I think we had a lot of good times with those. So I thought that this was the most appropriate thing to be drinking.
Well, I'm polishing off the last of my
the original.
Yeah.
Well, I'm one up on her. She's only getting 103 proof. I've got 116.
What's that one?
Oh my God.
What's it say?
That sounds.
You have 123 proof one?
Not yet. Well, we have 123 of a number of things, but not Icarus.
Can I tell a story about Icarus?
You should.
Of course, that's what we do. Drink and tell stories.
So last year? Yes, last year, 2020, before the pandemic really hit, I went to a burn supper, which is like a Scottish supper that celebrates the life and poetry of Robert Burns. And being a master blender, people asked me to, bring some of your whiskeys. Well, I did a blind tasting of peated Scotch and Icarus, and had people. I didn't tell anybody, what it was. I had about two proper Scotches, more, with a little bit of peat in them. And had them try that next to Icarus, and hands down, everybody preferred Icarus in the room. And I said, you just die when I tell you what this is. It's going to blow your minds. And so I was telling them, about Icarus, and they were just blown away. That's American straight corn whiskey. And I beat the Scotch. I'm sorry. I get just a lot of pleasure from that, from telling that story that it beat everything else at the burn supper.
I don't know which batch I have here, but it's the 52.5% of the Icarus. I'm not sure which batch it is, but it's good. So it's Marcia, is yours straight from the barrel then? It hasn't been bottled yet? Oh,
no,
okay.
It was we always play with the proof. When we put the peat and the port together, it goes through a time where you have to balance them out. And peat is one of the hardest blending components that we use. I find that the wine bases are much easier to integrate, but that peat, it fights it. And sometimes one day you'd taste it and it would be blaring through at you. The next moment, it would be gone. And so once we get it balanced, then we play with proof. And the first year, we really liked it when we put it all the way down. But, we left it a little higher. And then we said, well, should we do this? And everybody looked and shook their head and said, nah, leave it. So we left it at 116. Who knows where it'll go next year?
I love that. That's I can't wait to taste that.
And I may have, I have become a peat lover. I love peated whiskey. And back when we started, I wasn't as introduced to the peats. And so I think that Robert and I now are always pushing, it needs a little more peat, and Jonathan's trying to put brakes on us a bit sometimes.
So Sarah, what do you think about all of that? Should we be getting more, peaty iron root stuff?
I'm not a big peat fan. But this particular, I was just saying to William as we took little sips of this, it is one that I can tolerate because the peat is not the fire tire, burning rubber, dirty, wet Band-Aid.
That is harsh words for peat there, Sarah.
It is a lot of harsh words. I have a lot of feelings for peat. Feelings?
You really think?
I've never held back. But it's softer in this, and I love iron root, and it's the one that has always been on the fence for me because of the peat, but it is a tolerable peat for me. If someone were to hand that to me and there was nothing else to drink, I would have no problems drinking it. But if someone were to hand me an Ardbeg, I'd die of thirst. It's not going to happen. So I like it. I wish I had a higher proof version because I like the higher proof, but maybe one day I'll find it in higher proof.
I'm excited about that higher proof version.
Wow.
Boy,
I know what I need to do. I just need to make an hour and 30-minute drive north. And
so I just got back from North Carolina, and I was so excited. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try and see if they have some of these things that I just cannot get north of the border here. So I went looking for some Joe Mag, because I finished off, I had this tiny little, I think it's like 100 ml bottle that I had picked up in Texas like 3 years ago. And I finished that off.
Which is like $25 to begin with.
Yeah, it's $25 for like 100 ml bottle.
It's ridiculous.
It was worth it. And I nursed it for so long. I finished it off, actually, Nancy, when you did the show with Sarah and the Whiskey Crusaders crew. I was sitting in the chat and I'm like, okay, I've got a little bit left. I just need to finish this. So I went looking for Joe Mag and I went looking for Iron Root, and wouldn't you know it, neither of them are imported into North Carolina.
That's sad.
Well, you know what?
Damn it.
This spring they're going to get their first single barrel of Iron Root.
Oh, wow.
We were out there and they really wanted to bring it in. We just don't have enough volume to support another state fully right now. But because, you know why we did it is because actually there were a lot of women that were associated with the whiskey witches. And when they came, when Chris came out and talked to us and talked to Robert, and he says, you know what? He says, I think that we need to do this. And he says, and you're going with me, Mom, and we're going to go out there. And so we did. And the group does have men and women in it, but it was one of the reasons why is that we really were impressed with the fact that we had strong women bringing forth and trying to bring things into the state. And that was important for us to take that step.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
That makes me happy.
That makes me, I'm thinking I'm hoping I will get back to Texas within the next 12 months.
Come down.
And I have to, I have to, it's been too long. So I usually fly in and out of Houston because it's easier than flying to Austin. And I will try and find a place that I can.
You need to fly to DFW.
Okay.
And then it's an hour and 30 minutes to Iron Route.
Okay.
And then you're down in DFW. You can hit up Matt's house, which is 5 minutes from my house. And then just drive down to Austin.
And you stopped at Balcones on the way down, which is...
You can stop at Balcones on the way down because they're in Waco.
Yeah, and you drive right through there. And trust me, they got enough road traffic. You could probably stop, have a drink, and get back in your car, and you'd still be in the same place.
Actually,
I did. So the last time I was down, I ended up by accident, I got a Challenger, a Dodge Challenger as my car rental for the week and I'd already planned to like do some road tripping, but I'm like, I am road tripping. And so I drove from Houston to Waco and did the whole Balcones tour when I was there and bought whiskey before going to Psalm school. But yeah, I totally need to do a little bit more touring around, and I need to get to Iron Route because I see everybody talks about it, and if you are looking for a way to get into Canada at all, let me know. I know people, and we'll have some conversations, because if you're ready for that, we can. We have people that would love that.
Ready to
have. I see that somebody asks what states can.
Yes. So where can people get it? Like, do you have?
State of Texas, Total Wine has our Harbinger 115 and our Harbinger 90 proof, and we have a new a line of St. Sally that's a blended bourbon with MGP Iron Root and then in finishing barrels, and they will be carried at all Total Wines nationwide. So that will give us, that's the only bit we have right now. We're having trouble getting as much as we'd really like for the state of Texas. So that's where we're trying to focus primarily.
So come to Texas.
Yes, come to Texas. All of you, come.
So great.
And here's what you can really do, because people in Texas, and you can send some money to us, and we can pick the bottles up, and we can just store them here for you. And you come to Texas and you get your bottles.
Is there a storage tax on any of those bottles?
No. I'm a good friend.
Convenience fee, though, that might be.
Convenience fee. Yeah, we might have to buy something and drink it while you're here.
Yes,
but that's okay. That's doable.
But they have those wonderful suitcases, with wheels and that you can put 12 bottles in.
Yeah,
and just and they move it pretty nicely.
Yep, and they're really good for flying. So come on now, Cliff's got one. He can get you the information. Talk to Cliff. But
I have those bubble pack thingies. I've got like bubble wrappy bottle carrier things that go in my suitcase. And
you can also visit Still Austin when you're down here. And that is another one that Nancy has her little fingers in over there. And yes, she does.
the puppet master
at the meet party at Still Austin's. Chris couldn't have been more complimentary about the job you've done for them and how much they appreciate everything you're doing with them, Nancy.
He has nothing but
good really blessed.
Yeah, that's No, I love Chris. Yeah, he's
he's good people. I love what they're doing over there. That was really. I mean, we'd had their liquor or their whiskey before. We actually went to the the distillery, but we did have a chance to go to the distillery this last weekend, and I'll tell you, that's still all the way up there. That's amazing.
Did you get to taste that rye?
Yes.
Oh,
the cognac.
yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That I can't wait for that to come out. And you know, the bourbon was the finish, and cognac was good too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to all the things that are going to be coming out of that distillery too.
The rye, that and the rye recipe bourbon, you know, the position, but I have unfortunately not had the new wheat release yet. I mean, I had it when it was very young, and it's been a while since I've had that. But I think rye just in general does so well in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, not just it's still Austin, but
And Texas climate.
yeah. I'm a huge rye fan, I have to say. Love
yeah.
rye.
So am I. So am
Love
I.
you too.
Erica, how do you feel about rye, Erica? Can you let us know what your thoughts on rye are?
I respect people who enjoy rye, and it is just not my choice. I enjoy that ryes that don't taste like rye.
Bingo.
Yeah,
So, like the Balcones rye. Have you had the Balcones rye?
I have. I also do not like that one necessarily. It still is a
It
little
tastes
too
like
harsh.
chocolate and coffee.
It really does.
Yeah, I will say Ed laughs at me when I say like rye is too harsh, and then I like down 2 glasses of Lefroy, and like it's a different type of harsh.
Ed also really likes rye, so you know it's not harsh to him. I just poured myself a little. I have a sample of the Cask Strength, Still Austin. So since we were talking about that, I figured I'd pour myself a little bit of that too. I got a random selection of Iron Root and a couple other things that Nancy has.
Well, because I couldn't get Iron Root when I was in North Carolina, I'm going to go with some of my Eleanor. But I was also I did my Crowded Barrel Wyoming Whiskey Alliance bottling, which was another single. So I'm like, okay, it's what I can do. I'm limited, but I'm saving some stuff that I'm going to spring at the end. I'm going to spring some stuff at the end.
I'm very sorry you're in Canada.
Yeah, well, I'm going to spring some things at the end that are going to make y'all a little jealous. At least,
yeah,
that's going to be my play. I'm trying to make you jealous with things you can't get.
Yeah, I got my bottle to make you jealous, and you know what it is. So
I got to tell you a story, Theresa, because you're from Canada, right? So you know that Texas is really big into Crown, right? In fact, we probably sell more Crown in the state of Texas than you do in the country of Canada.
Oh, that's quite possible.
And everybody says, where do you get it from? I says, it's probably the petroleum engineers that brought it back here. Because it's so popular, and they always mix it with Coke, right? And so Jonathan coined a word. He says, Cokeability. He said, when we made Iron Root, one of the things we looked at is it had to have Cokeability, because we understand the market of Texas. And so we always laugh because everybody says, oh, it's a sin to put your whiskey in Coke. But that's our joke. We have a Cokeability. And that's a Coke.
That's an interesting concept, because you know what, like the thing is that it's great to be somebody who loves whiskey, and it's great to be somebody who appreciates pulling out the Glencairns the way that we do, or your Copadas, and you know, enjoying it neat and smelling all the smells and just enjoying it as it is. But there's a whole side of things, and I mean, next month, I think we've got Heather from Bourbon Women, and she's the cocktail Contessa. Because
she is phenomenal.
You know, she's awesome. She's good people. We've had her on 3 or 4 times already, and it's great to be able to have something that's going to stand up in a cocktail, or something that as simple as a highball where you have that Cokeability. I love that term. It's great because that's where the majority of people live when it comes to their whiskey. They want something that they can drink at a party. They want something that they can sip on while they're watching a movie. And I mean, it's great to have whiskey that you can do on its own, but it's also nice to know that you can do something more with it.
Okay, but I'm going to tell you another funny story is that I went to one of these whiskey groups a number of years ago. And of course, it was mainly men. And I remember them saying to me, but Marcia, you just don't know what we drink. So we could say, well, maybe there's some that need Coke. But maybe if they tasted stuff as good as what we're tasting,
right?
Every time I think of that, I get a good laugh. But we always, I don't do a tasting that I don't tell people, here's the ice cube, here's the water, here is the 7-Up. And I like to tell them the story. I went to Cognac, right? Mm-hmm. So we're at Cognac. Nancy's with us. We sit down, and I think it's my first lunch here, right? Sat down. I ordered Cognac, of course, and I get this glass, and it's filled this full. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, they give good pours of whiskey Cognac over here. And then I took my first taste of it, and I thought, darn, they don't put ice with their soda over here. And it was ginger ale and Cognac. But you know what? I think the Cognac's their spirit, and if that's how they like to drink it, that's how they should drink it.
I love it. That's absolutely. Yep. Yeah,
but they should put ice in it. No. Just saying.
It was a fun trip. I have to say we had a great time. We were over there. I quickly wanted to ask or to answer a question that Charles Ashworth asked about whether or not I blended Wyoming whiskeys Thunder Basin, and I just wanted to say, Charles, I did. I've blended everything since 2014. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I hope you liked the Thunder Basin, but anyway, just wanted to answer that.
I missed that.
I want to talk a little bit about what you actually do when somebody calls you up and says, "Hey, can you come help us?" Some of the things that you do when you are called in to say, when you were originally called into Iron Root or Still Austin. I mean, Chris talked a little bit about, the steps that you took when you got in there, but is it the same every time you go? Do you have a checklist that you go through from start to finish to figure out where you need to be? Or tell us a little bit about what you do if I were to call you up and say, "Hey, Nancy, can you come consult with us?" And,
how do you make the magic happen?
How do you make that happen?
It depends. So, like with the Marcia and Jonathan and Robert, I came in pretty much from the beginning.
Yes, Nancy. You were here before we did our first mash, or we did our first mash and our first distillation, because I remember specifically they were so excited. They took the first, they ran their first distillation off the still, and they are tasting it. They're talking to it. They're talking to Nancy. And they said, and she says, "Well, and what are your cuts?" And I just remember her at the other end, there was like this pause, and she said, "I think that'll be in the barrel for a long time." And you know what? The Danica barrel is #1 is still in the barrel, Nancy.
Still there. That's
wow.
It's the oldest, but it's kind of funny because when people come, they'll say, how often do you go to a distillery and you get to taste the first distillation on the first run of a still of a distillery? Not very often do you get to, you don't do that. Right now in Texas, we're writing history because our distilling is 13 years old. And so it depends who your backgrounds came from. Dan Garrison went to Kentucky. Chip Tate went to Scotland. We went to, and we met Nancy and Hubert early on, and that influenced the brandy techniques and everything we did from, the day one. And so that's where we were when we started, Nancy. But there's a lot of places that call you because after it, when they've gotten too far down the road, the wrong road.
Yeah, and that's quite honestly, I don't do too much of that anymore. I mean, I've got a few core distilleries that I work with, pretty much permanently now, and but yeah, I mean, it's the call that I never have really liked getting is when somebody's kind of gotten started and they're on the wrong foot. They've got very unclean, unhealthy fermentations. They're not distilling correctly, or they're using poor quality cooperage, all kinds of things like that. And then it's just like you're trying to do damage control at that point. Whereas like what we did at Iron Root, or J. Henry and Sons, or certain other distilleries, well, they're not. I'm not going to go there, but anyway, they're not technically a distillery, but
right.
But anyway, that said, the point being is it's a lot easier when you just start from ground zero and go up, rather than have to go and do damage control. That is not fun. Oh, there's my partner and my dog right behind me.
That's okay. And cheers and happy anniversary to you too.
Happy anniversary, Naomi.
Happy anniversary.
Say hi. But that's a much better position to not ever have those issues to begin with. I mean, hold on a minute. Yum.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry.
Okay.
She's on the phone talking to somebody. But that said, if when you go in to work with somebody that has issues, it's just your job is really to stop the bleeding, I guess, and to to try and turn the ship around. And it's not a very comfortable place to be. Fortunately, I don't really have to do that kind of stuff much anymore. I'm able to do a lot more exciting projects. For example, I don't know if you all have heard of Camet whiskey out of India.
Oh yeah,
it's one of the new hot rising whiskeys. I co-blended that with the former master distiller at Amroot.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
and I'm gonna continue working with them. I've got the distillery I'm working with in Israel. I'm kind of trying to go a little bit more international now and not do the damage control kind of stuff anymore. It's not.
Are you allowed to? Can you say, like, is it Milk and Honey, or is it somebody else?
It's not Milk and Honey. I'm not at liberty to say, but
fair enough.
They now have 3-year-old malt whiskey, and so they've kind of been under the table, and until I'm legally allowed to talk about that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just to say that I don't really do damage control work anymore. I'm so over that kind of stuff.
There was a question early on in the chat, and I think it kind of segueing here maybe a little bit, to ask what the worst distillery was that ever approached you. But and that's probably putting things a little bit too on the spot. So I would say, has there ever been somebody come to you in that damage control going, we just realized that we don't know, so have you ever been approached by somebody where you were going in like super damage control and having to turn the ship around? Or have you ever sort of walked away from somebody because you're like, y'all aren't ready to hear what needs to be done yet?
Can't say this nicely to you, so
yeah, sure. Well, some of all of the above.
Yeah, and not going to ask you to name names, but
no. I wouldn't dare. But
no,
I'll put it this way, and some of this has kind of been international in the Caribbean for rum. That's all I'll say is I've been in a situation or two where my life has actually been in danger based on some of their practices, like not having for example, I was at a distillery in the Caribbean somewhere that shall remain nameless. Where the only way that I had told them that they really needed to buy a high alcohol or a pump that's made for high proof alcohol, and instead they rather than spending $2,500 to $5,000, they spent $200 on a whole pump on off of Amazon, and the only way to turn the pump on and off is to actually take the breaker, on for the electricity,
like the whole building breaker, like kill the whole building.
Yeah, and of course the only one that knows how to fill barrels is me, right? So,
oh man,
I won't delve into the expletives. Like,
Oh my
what's
goodness!
shouting
Never
in
a million years would have
that situation, but there have been a few instances like that where I've actually felt like my life was at risk.
Turn and run.
Oh my goodness.
That is,
Marcia, you don't do anything like that, though. Y'all are on the up and up. You're doing things. You are investing in quality.
Yeah, and we keep things clean, and we keep our hoses hung, and we follow, because from day one, if you start with somebody who sets out and tells you this is what you need to do,
you do it.
And I think the reason why we've had such a wonderful relationship, Nancy always says that we've kind of become her colleagues now more than clients, but it was because we were good students. We listened, we followed, and we learned. I think that's where we were, and developed a wonderful friendship along the way. But you have to have somebody who knows what they're doing to start with, and you have to be open to listening to what they have to say, and evaluating, how you can make it happen. And I mean, we don't have the fanciest equipment. I mean, we are very basic here. I mean, we haul hoses. We don't have anything. Nothing's computer run. But if you learn and you follow and techniques, and then you learn to apply, and you learn to know what you know, and you can. It allows you to grow. You don't have to become a pattern, but as you're beginning, you learn. And then you read other things. And if you have the ability to apply the knowledge you were given, I think this is what makes the biggest difference. A lot of people try to copycat. And I think one of the things that I think with Jonathan and Robert is that they have the ability to take information and build on what they hear and what they do. But you got to have good teachers.
And you have to have an emergency shut off button that doesn't kill your whole building.
You could eat off the floor in Iron Root, and that's what that to me is, and any distillery where I walk into, and I know I could quite literally eat off the floor. That's that kind of care and precision is always going to transfer to the distillate, the quality of the distillate, and that makes such a big difference. I think.
And I mean, when it comes down to it, these people they're paying you to come in and help, and for them to not take your advice, the person who they are paying that knows what they're doing, that have been to other distilleries, have done it. They're just stupid, I think, in my opinion. That's a waste of money if you're not going to take what the person that you've brought in and they're saying, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, and then you skimp on this, this, and this. It seems kind of a waste to me not to actually, take your words to heart and do what you're telling them to.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly what Marcia said. Like, you have to be a good student, and like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying it has to be like a partnership. It can't just be you coming in and saying, do this and hoping they do it. It's like they have to actually be willing to listen and implement ideas and truly listen.
That I would say though too that, and I could correct me if I'm wrong, Marcia, but at this point, they've studied with me. Robert had initially studied with my mentor Hubert Germain Robin, and they're far enough along that they can, they've become their own thing, very separate from me, if that makes sense. And but I consider you guys, Marcia, is we're part of a common lineage, though, and you can take what works for you or what doesn't work for you, and not use that, but I see it's kind of both, that it's part of the same lineage, if that makes sense. Very much in like the French way of making whiskey, if that makes sense. French American way, maybe you could call it. French Texas way.
French Texas.
French Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
More new words.
Yeah. That's but I think you guys. I mean, we're still great friends, and but we're colleagues now, and
Nancy, sometimes when she comes for the blending class, she'll say, I'm seeing this. What do you guys think? So she looks for other outside. Have you run across this? This is something that I haven't, and so. It's really a wonderful relationship that we have grown into.
Yeah, that's I'll ask them for advice. I'm stumped on something that I've encountered, and what do you taste this? What do you think about this? Or what would you do in this situation, or whatever.
And we're in a daily, we're distilling every day. We're running those stills. We're running that. And those are a little bit different experiences, because Nancy does not run a still every single day. And so sometimes having done it, I think over 600 mashes, you got to, we've learned something.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is I think whereas they now have great depth in what they do at Iron Root, I probably what I bring, because I work for people around the world, from India to Australia, Belize, Canada, Mexico, whatever, is that whereas I might have a little bit more breadth, they've got more depth in some ways, and I think we really complement one another that way.
So, yeah, you helped Iron Root when they were getting off on their feet and everything and getting going, and now Marcia, you guys are you've got a flow going. You've learned what you need to do and how you need to do, and are self-improving every day. What, Nancy, do you do with Iron Root these days? Are you still helping blend with them? Are you, consulting with them still?
No.
Or are you just friends now? And,
No, we're definitely friends.
Yeah. It's hard not to be.
So no, you're almost family, actually.
Yeah.
If I can say so. Not so much. I mean, I come in, to teach my blending class once a year in December, and maybe we'll taste through some barrels together. But I mean, you guys are pretty much doing everything on your own, aren't you?
Yeah. Jonathan and Jonathan has a wonderful palate, and he's both of the boys are very creative. it's always a learning, and so they read a lot, they apply a lot, and at this point, Jonathan and Robert are especially Jonathan. He does the distilling, and he knows the barrels intimately, just from so much work with them. So right now we enjoy doing the blending classes, and no matter where you go, whether it's at a conference or whether it's Nancy coming in, when you talk to other professionals that are in the business, I think we all learn from each other, and all I think that it's just a community of people that have a lot of good experiences, sharing a lot of good ideas all the time. But we always look forward to December. Somebody says, "Where can I get those blending classes?" Nancy has them. You can sign up at ADI, and she'll be here in December.
Okay, so that I earmarked that because I was kind of curious. Like I know up in Canada, over in Ontario, so it's 4-hour flight from me. But Dr. Don Livermore over at JP Weiser's here in Walker, he does a blending 101 class that is open to the public. It's only like $100, and you get to go in and you can play with all of these whiskeys that Hiram Walker makes. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
Maybe we should all go.
Yeah. I'm like, blending 101 for $100. Okay. But of course, because of COVID, everything has been shut down. So I keep waiting and watching. I'm like, can I get a flight? Can I get a cheap flight to Windsor? How, okay. But so Nancy, you do host blending classes, and you do them at Iron Root too?
Yes. Well, I've only done them at Iron Root, or that's where the 3-day intensive classes that I do, and so day one is lecture and such. Day two is sensory analysis. And day three, I'm actually having I break the class up into groups, and I give them a standard, of which something I've blended up that they've I then give them all the components that they need to remake that, and we always I have everybody taste each other's work, and see kind of who comes the closest to my blend. And what's really interesting to me is just because I give people the components doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to use that in the blend. So maybe I'll give them 10 or 5 or 10 components, and people often feel like, oh, we've got to use everything. She gave us 20-year-old whiskey in here, then we've got to use it. Well, the blend might not have that. I mean, it might, but got to kind of.
It's a tough one. It's tough. I did a fun blending experience over at Barrel at the Bourbon Women's Group, and they did it with it, and they only gave you three components, and all 3 of them were in it, and it was fun to see who got the closest. And I will tell you, it was no one that was in the industry.
Wow.
So,
But it was one of those overthink things, you know how it is. And you said, certainly they're not using 195%, right? When we all just say that.
Well, I will say that I real quick, I remember Robert, I put the components in front of him, gave him
Robert did nail it.
And I mean, he got scarily close to the exact percentages of what I used in the blend. Damn, Robert.
Wow.
Right.
One of the components for the level 3 sommelier course is to they give you all the components basically of one of the Compass House blends, because of course Compass Box is very transparent. in terms of their
what they use
blends, right, and what goes into it. And so they give you, I can't remember which one it is, but it's like, okay, this is what you need to try and make, and here are all the components, and you're trying to get the closest on nose, taste, and mouth feel. And so, you could try to go for any one of those three. But it's harder than it sounds like, even to get the percent, like even once we knew the percentages, it's like, wow, like we were way off. Like we managed, we worked in pairs. And so the guy I was working with, he's like, my sense of smell is like not great. I'm like, well, that doesn't help. But the mouth feel, it feels about the right texture, and it tastes very close. So I think we're good. So we were actually very, very close on it. But like it's a like, even when you're only working with 4 or 5 components, it's tough to dial in. And
now you have to remember, when people are creating blends, that you create the first, I remember, was the big triangle on what did we want our whiskey to be. And that was the first time before we ever created Harbinger. It is, what do you want your whiskey to be? And then you create it. Now, if you are a small distillery like Iron Root, and if you're a pot still distillation, that means that every distillation is going to be, when you finish it, you're done and you start over. It's totally different than a continuous column. Continuous column has the ability to maintain that blend and things more so, because they are not stopping and starting. And it's also, when you're making something that you're trying to blend and you're using 5 barrels, it is almost much more difficult than if you have Jim Beam, and I'm making up the numbers because I have no idea. I'm just going to clarify this, but it's big because I've seen how big it is. But and they're pouring them in so that if you get one barrel that is kind of not right with it, when you put 500 barrels in, you lose it in it. If you have one barrel that's off and you're putting 6 or 8 together, you're in trouble.
Right.
So
I kind of wondered about that.
Doing small batches like Iron Root, we have to be very much blend dependent. And so we had to become good blenders. We had to be able to do this, and we had to be able to think, and that would be Jonathan and Robert, that what is out there in this barrel, what is it going to bring? And sometimes, Nancy would say, you don't have to put the whole barrel in, just put a gallon in. And, you were thinking, so some of those things were all of those little techniques and those things you learn. But it really is dependent on your distillery and how much you depend on the blend.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And just real quick to follow what Marcia had to say, that when you're doing very small blends like that, that say 5 to 10 barrels, maybe, or 3 to 10 barrels, I don't know, that even 1 gallon from a barrel, depending on the aromatic intensity of that component, can make or break the whole thing. I mean, it can just either wrap the whole blend up and solidify it, or completely destroy it.
And the younger the whiskeys, really the harder. The younger the whiskeys, the harder. As soon as you get into those older whiskeys, they tend to be able to hold it together more. But younger whiskeys are really dependent on that blend. They're also really dependent on proof. And younger whiskeys, that's why a lot of the younger whiskeys showcase higher proofs better than some of the lower ones, because they as you proof them down, like below 90 proof, they start. I'm going to say they don't hold it together, but you probably have a better way of saying that, Nancy.
No, that's you're exactly right. They don't hold it together. They tend to just kind of break down in a sense, but become flabby and.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like when I think about, I remember Daniel Whittington from the Whiskey Vault talking about how doers will take, they're dialing in this flavor profile using 40 or 50 or more barrels. And I kind of got to think about it because I've played with some trying to blend some things at home. You want to play, you want to feel like you're part of the magic, and or you get the people who play with their infinity bottles, which is such a great idea. But I kind of got to thinking, I'm like, you know what? Like when you're a kid and those early blending experiences that you have with pop, making swamp water. Everybody who remembers making swamp water as a kid, right?
Suicides. We call them suicides.
And it didn't matter. At a certain point, it didn't matter what pops you put together. You got swamp water, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just this idea that you had taken Coke and C5 plus and C plus, or and root beer, and it's like at a certain point, do you just sort of find that you kind of, it's like, well, yeah, if you're putting 40 things together, you're not really dialing it at all. Just kind of, it just becomes part of the lake. and you get that place by default almost. Like if you're doing it in that big of a quantity, or am I completely out to lunch? Or is there still?
Not necessarily. There's kind of like a basic theory to blending that. It doesn't matter if you're blending, whiskey or wine or tea or coffee or, whatever, that you can kind of, the way I like to teach it is you can kind of think about your blend like a pyramid in a sense, or like you're building, building a house, you've got to have a foundation, and, you put up the skeleton,
the walls and the roof, and then
or a piece of music or something like that. But a pyramid is usually the easiest way to envision it. And so the very base of the pyramid would kind of be those components that, for example, let's say I want to build some dimension to a bourbon. So the very base of the pyramid, which I'll probably draw the most, most of the stock will come from that. It might be very vanilla and caramel forward, but it's kind of unidimensional and outside of that. There's just not a whole lot going on. So what you're trying to do at that point is to kind of fill in the blanks. So the next level in the pyramid, maybe you're looking for barrels for that bourbon that might have a little bit more, say, dark dried fruit, date, fig, those kind of notes. It's not just like caramel, vanilla forward. It has a little bit more dimension. So now you've kind of got a bourbon that's got a little bit more dimension to it, and the final, the very end or top of the pyramid that you use just a very, very, very small percentage of would be what I call the nuance components, and those are the things that kind of add a lot of passion or interest or complexity to the blend. So for example, using our bourbon blend here, maybe it's barrels that came from very high on in the high up in a rick house. Oh, Shelter Point. That's one of the ones I've worked on before, by the way, for years ago.
Yes.
Anyway, that's.
and y'all can't get it in the U.S., so suck it.
Suck it.
I've already been sucking on that. Yes.
But anyway, the nuance components are. I love that. That's great. I'm just going to get my Shelter Point, by the way. But anyway, where I was going with that, that's where. Maybe it's just like one barrel in a blend of 10 or 20 or maybe even 40 that is so aromatic, so spicy, or it's got something that's really unique that just by itself it would really fail as a single barrel, or it would also maybe fail, if you had a lot of barrels like that, it would just be a, totally disappointed, overwhelming blend. But just a little bit of that kind of wraps up the whole thing. And that's kind of like a good way to think of blending. And it does, you can take that paradigm from very small blends all the way to very large blends. And that's the way I think about it. You're building flavor, building layers of flavor. And I don't know if you want to add to that, Marcia.
Well, one thing about it, Iron Root does it differently than the majority. We do not have a set mash bill that we create the same mash bill all the time. We go back and we have in our core lineup, we will do a Bloody Butcher corn, we will do a purple corn, we'll do a Floriani corn, and we will do a rye. And so as we do those, that adds another layer of the blending technique, because it isn't like a single barrel of everything, because the Harbinger line is going to feature more of our Bloody Butcher and purple, because we're looking more of what we call the brunch flavors. We're looking for the caramels. We're going to the vanillas. We're going to the maple with that really nice sweetness. We're going to look for some of those nice roasted nuts. When we go to Promethean, we do the flip. And this is why this is the one that works well with a lot of our cocktails, is because when we use that Floriani, it's one of the few corns that'll bring some nice spice to it. It also has more rye in it. And so therefore we go to the darker fruits, the plums, the figs, the dark tea, the chocolate that's got a little bit of that cinnamon in it, and it has that wonderful long finish to it. So we are looking at our blending in a totally different manner than somebody who has a set mash bill that they're doing all the time. So our individual barrels actually carry a lot more weight and difference for us.
See, I've heard it. I've heard it said from a few different places, and they tend to end up being some of my favorite distilleries, is that they put their spirit away and then they treat it like a spice cabinet. And I love that analogy, because for anybody, I mean, and most people, we have to feed ourselves unless we have a personal chef. And so that idea of having a pantry that you can go to, and you're building a recipe, and you might have a recipe that says, well, we want, this much corn, this much wheat, this much rye, this much malt, and whatever that might be. To then say, well, you can't just follow the recipe. Sometimes you have to follow that intuition. And that's where you get some of that magic that starts to happen in being able to say, okay, well, yeah, I followed the recipe, but how come grandma's taste so much better?
Now, John,
or how come the mama of Texas makes, stuff that just tastes better? Like mama's always tastes best, right?
Yeah. Well, Jonathan always talks about it. He says that when you take the traditional mash bill of the yellow dent corn, rye is usually your flavoring ingredient. Of course, your proprietary yeasts are, and the malted barley doesn't really add that much flavor. And so you've got your rye making the big difference, or if it's a wheated bourbon, the wheat making it. So what he says is that's kind of your steak. He likes to grill, so steak with your salt and pepper on it. But now, if you want to add those extra seasonings, that's where our heirloom corns come in, when we're adding those extra 5%. Or sometimes when he's really creative, because he's like an artist, he talks about having a palette. And instead of having your 4 basic colors, you can have the more colors you have on your palette, the prettier your pictures can be. So he talks in those same exact analogies that you're describing.
Yeah.
So,
go
ahead. Go ahead.
No,
what you have to say is probably more important.
Yeah. I was going to point out that we're it's quarter past the hour, so we've been going for an hour and 50, almost an hour and 20 now. I'm cool to keep going. I know I'm in Alberta, so we're Mountain Standard. We're Mountain Time, so it's like still early here. It's maybe getting late in Texas or Wisconsin, but
I'm in California, so it's
yeah, you're like, it's still like practically dinner time for y'all. Yeah. So I mean,
it's almost
we usually just
over
kind of
there, huh?
yeah, we usually just kind of go until we decide that we're done. So I'm good to keep going if y'all are, but
yeah, sure. That's
and I'm going with I opened up. This is a double-barreled shelter point that was finished in a cask from a winery out in the Okanagan in BC. So I cracking this one tonight special. So, but yeah, I actually, so when I turned off the camera earlier, it was because I forgot to bring my shelter point and put it beside, and I had to go and grab the shelter point because I did a tasting with the distillery, and they mentioned specifically that they had worked with Nancy. Mm-hmm. And when you did the event with the Whiskey Crusaders, you're like, yeah, I've worked with distilleries in Canada, but I can't say. And I'm like, now I know who it is. So I'm
yes. Well, so I think I'm now okay. Knowing that I'm at liberty, I have worked with the shelter point, obviously. Also Eau Claire.
Oh, really? They're like an hour from me.
Very early on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And their distiller now, Caitlin, is she's such a sweetheart.
Yeah, we have. Just I won't get into it, but getting the fact that you've really got cold winters and the dryness, getting the maturation right was kind of a challenge, to say the least. I mean, I think it was like far worse than Wyoming. That's another story, but not
to rub it in Theresa's face or anything, but I opened my Joe Mag cigar blend. This was a gift.
I was rubbing it in my face too. I don't have any of that. The only time I get some is when Nancy brings some.
I'll bring the bottle.
She sets it out at her blending class. I want to steal it off the table because I know that they're going to drink it all and there's not going to be anything left.
It's so good.
Rain every year because I might get caught.
I'll bring you guys your own bottle.
So this was I was
Theresa, when you come to Texas, we could do a bottle exchange if you brought something special from.
Ooh, I'm usually muling a few things south of the border, so I'm down for that. So as much as I was really hoping that I would find some iron root, I really, really wanted that. I wanted another Joe Mag to bring home because I just at the time I was so mad at myself that I didn't just drop the $80 on the bottle on the full size because so what happened was it was my first time in Texas, and after SOM class I went to one of the wine stores. I think it's probably Total Wine. It might have been I don't know. Anyways, I went to the store and I'm like, all right. And I ended up talking with this gal who worked in the spirits section, and she's like, you want to try something? I'm like, sure. What do you want to? Sure. And she's like, here, try this. And it was some Joe Mag. And then she's showing me the bottle and it's $80. I'm like, I've already been buying some things and I don't know if I can really afford to drop $80 US after the exchange. That's like north of $100 Canadian for me. I'm like, that's a lot. And I'm like, so I went away and I came back a couple of days later before I left. And then I noticed that they had this little mini bottle of it. And I'm like, okay, well, it's $25, but 25 US is still better than $80 US. So I'll get that. And I got home, and when I cracked back into it, I was so mad at myself. I was mad at myself for not just sucking it up. And
it had to have been years ago, because when we bought this bottle of Joe Mag, which we've been milking, it was 100.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah,
it's over 100 now.
Over 100.
I think this is the cigar blend is closing in on 2.
Yeah.
And this was a gift. I'm thankful for this gift. like I'm going to cherish this bottle for as long as I can.
Yeah.
And William, my husband's been sitting over here with his glass, just waiting for me to open this bottle because he wants.
No, what's your batch number again, Sarah?
This one is 21.
It's what?
21.
21. Okay, yeah. That's been quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
and he had gotten it because he happened to see it on the shelf and has been holding on to it for a little while. And I just got it this weekend. So
So Erica, did you get any of the samples when you were down at Crowded Barrel?
I got to try a couple things, but like
You
Sarah and
didn't go
Theresa have
home
been
with
arguing
the
about who has
samples?
the coolest stuff, and I literally have 2 bottles on my table today. So
of what?
I was going to say, there should have been samples for you to take back.
Ed might have hid them all for me. He does that.
Oh no.
Ed.
That's the opposite.
Ed, you
When I got good stuff around here, I hide it from Robert. Because Robert's always tasting everything, and then then everything good is gone, right?
Selfish people.
I have to do that around here too with the stuff that I don't want him to touch. Because he will drink everything.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hoard the whiskey.
Yeah, just quickly, I was going to say the most recent batches of cigar blend, probably since about batch 40 or so, have been like in the 130 range, 130 proof range.
Oh, we were hoping you were saying 130 on the dollar range.
Oh,
Right?
well,
this
but,
one's 62.15.
One at 30 proof is, you're still getting a lot of, pure alcohol for your dollar at least.
Right?
So, but I will say I'm kind of, and I have nothing to do with this, but when I see like 300 or 400 or 600, there's a place that I've even seen it for $1,000.
Oh, geez.
That to me feels that just not right. I'm embarrassed when I see that kind of stuff. And,
That's beyond secondary market.
oh God,
Way beyond.
that's unconscionable. I think to ask a consumer to do that.
It's for
Gross.
200 for the cigar blend.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it for that.
I disagree. The only thing I would personally pay that kind of money for, like $1,000, as Marcia knows, maybe for
Armagnac.
like a
Not 1,000.
vintage Armagnac or something.
And that would be only for your birthday, right?
Yeah. Which I've done that kind of thing. I buy that for myself for my birthday.
Definitely not 1,000. I would not pay 1,000 for the cigar blend, but what it's at around here, like the $200 range, I would consider myself pulling the trigger on that because that's what it is around here, and it's exceptional whiskey. The same with just the standard Joe Mag, the $100. I was okay with paying that because of what it is. There are a lot of them that no, I won't pay that because it's just not that good.
But
Not good
so
enough.
I guess one of these days, it's just real quick. It's 14 plus years to 20. Plus, you're getting very high proofs. So at least if you want to water it down, it's your choice.
Right.
And
I like the high proof.
You're getting the alcohol, and you can decide. I still find that kind of like a price gouging, just really gross.
Oh, completely.
Anyway, I didn't mean to go there to get too deep in that, but
no, it's okay.
Let people know that I have nothing to do with that. That's whatever retailers.
Right.
And I guess it kind of opens a bit of a question because Marcia, you work at the distillery. You have to be able to say, okay, well, this is what we're as the manufacturer. Essentially, this is what we are selling it, and you don't have a lot of control down the line as to what those markups start to be. And Nancy is somebody who comes in as a consultant to consult on those things. It's definitely one of those things that you just don't, you might have a value in mind of what you are trying to produce, but you don't necessarily have that throughput to what the retail cost is. But I'm sort of curious as to what everybody maybe sort of has, and maybe we can start with Erica and kind of go clockwise around the camera here to say, where do you sort of find that value starts to kind of drop off? So what sort of what you feel is a top dollar for the best value that you get, like the best for the money that you've spent. So Erica, maybe let's start with you and say, what are you willing to spend to get that this was amazing for the price or whatever?
So I feel like I have like a variety of factors. Like
Mhm.
I'll drop money on distillers that like I know and I love to support. So like and also a big factor is like Ed buys a lot of our whiskey because he is Ed. He is an impulsive creature and he just brings me things and says to drink them. But like distillers I love, if it's like a taste profile, like I've been very open. I love the taste of sweet and peat. So like if I get like a scotch aged in a bourbon barrel, like that will get my money. That can have my money. But like I'm also willing to try adventurous things given that I want to see more creative like flavor profiles in whiskey, but I think there are some things that they taste similar to cheaper things and I'm just like why would I drop this money if I can get something of equal caliber for maybe like $50?
Fair enough. Nancy, what about you? What kind of goes into your, where's that sort of drop off for you? Where do you find, or what are you willing to spend to get what you think you?
Well, that's a good question. I guess for bourbons, well, first of all, I get a lot of barrel samples straight from the cask for free.
You don't really have to buy a whole lot of bourbon.
So quite honestly, I don't buy a whole lot of bourbon anymore. I mean, not that I haven't in the past, but but that said, what I like is something that's really going to be if I'm going to drop a chunk of change on something, I want something that gives me an evening. I can do a little pour of something and spend all evening with it, and find all different kinds of maybe it takes me back to down memory lanes, so to speak, and I really feel like, wow, at the end of the evening I've really gone on a journey, and I wouldn't say that I'll pay any price. I mean, I'm not independently wealthy or anything, but that said, that if for a bourbon or any kind of whiskey that will take me on that kind of journey, I'm willing to pay for it. And I will not have it every night. I obviously, it's the kind of thing I'd probably be sharing with friends, and
I think it's definitely an important consideration, right? Like when you have something that's like, this is special, and you want to share it with the people who you think of as being special to yourself, right? It elevates that whole experience of what that whiskey means.
People that are going to appreciate it in the same way that you will. Maybe they're not industry people. That's okay, but maybe they really appreciate what it is that you're sharing with them, and it's so special. It just kind of brings everybody together. That to me, if I know that there's a whiskey out there, whether it be bourbon or I love malt whiskey, scotches and Irish whiskeys too. probably the my just real quick, then I'll let Marcia have the floor here. Probably my quote danger area where I have spent serious stow is in vintage Armagnacs, and so I've got some going back to the 19th century. And I've got some from the 20s and 30s, a lot from the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Wow.
Once I even did a flight at my house of 3 centuries of Armagnac.
Wow. No,
for friends, and that's the but then again, those kind of things I know have aged for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And if the quality is there, I'm, that's where I'm willing to.
It's easy to kind of get glib about it. I find like there are there's oh well that's it's 20 or it's 16 or it's this or it's that. It's like think about that. Like think about the people who are that age, and even for things that are younger. Like I have a bottle that was gifted to me, and it was distilled in the 1950s and bottled before 1960. And I'm only 42. So, I mean, yes, it's an 8-year-old whiskey, but that bottle has been around.
Yeah, that's you would think about everything that was happening during that time, and if you have friends they're over that really get that experience, get what's happening. I mean, it's just to me kind of like a spiritual experience. I know, bad.
Take me to church. I'm spiritual.
But it is, and with that, I'll pass things over to Marcia. Wrong way.
Yeah.
Well, Marcia, how about you? Those kind of I've had the opportunity to taste those. And have been at Nancy's and different places, and some wonderful people that have shared their whiskeys. I think that some of the whiskeys that that you're talking about are not ones that people can find very easily. I think that people they go to secondary markets and things. I think that when I look at it, if I'm really going to make that leap. I might go out to a good whiskey bar and be willing to spend the money just to taste it before I am willing to spend those hundreds of dollars for something just to see, is it really worth it or is it hype? A lot of times, just because it has an age on it doesn't mean it's a good whiskey. I think that so some of those things. I think if you're going to really want to invest and think about it that way, you need to make sure you know what you're buying before you do it. I'm looking for something that I'm going to spend money on. I like something that's got a little higher proof, but I also don't want a whiskey that has a lot of ethanol on it. I want something that's got great flavor. I want something that's got a nose. I want something you can, as Nancy said, you can sit and spend time with. One that I enjoyed that. I decided to spend money. It happened to be a Glengoyne, a 25-year-old Glengoyne, and we were in Scotland, and we looked at this, and I don't spend $200 on a bottle of whiskey very often. For me, that was a splurge, and to go there and to taste it and to really know. And to this day, every time I taste that, I'm saying, that was a darn good buy. And that's what I want to do. And I want to be able to say that I want it to be something that is really worth it. And I've spent time. Now, I'll go out and taste and buy, the $50 whiskeys or the $60 whiskeys or whatever. And I think that there's so many, the whiskey groups are phenomenal. Because people will go out and they will bring and they will share and sometimes sometimes it doesn't have to be an expensive whiskey. Sometimes it can be that $30 whiskey and somebody brings it and you get to taste it and it's the one that speaks to me. So I think that's it's not always price. It's got to be the whiskey that speaks to you.
I 100% agree with that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
You mentioned, friends bringing things to share, and you've come across things that you might not have had because somebody's sharing with you and whatnot. I really wish that Jonathan would have brought you to the La Quinta this past weekend. There was hundreds of bottles there. And I mean, like you said, those are the best times to really find things that you haven't tried before, is in like a bottle share setting where you've got a bunch of friends together and you're here, try this. This is one of that I really like. Have you had this? No, here, try it. And you never know what you're going to find.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And sometimes you find something you think, oh man, you just brought that because you didn't want to drink it. No.
Right. There are some of those. We've come across several of those. Before I go into, what I look for, etc., for both you, Nancy, and Marcia, what is your go-to when you're not drinking what you work on daily? I know, Nancy, you've got several different distilleries that you work with.
Right.
So none of those included because you work with those. And Marcia, no iron root. What's your go-to when it's not what you work with?
I'll pop in on that. So I kind of feel like I can go to any, forgive me, any dive bar in the United States, and I've been to plenty. I've been working in places where there's just the bar doesn't really have much else but kind of well products. One thing I kind of a bourbon that I find very consistent and that I have to say I just really love is Wild Turkey 101.
Oh yeah.
It's just I can be anywhere in the United States or heck anywhere in the world really, and if I want to taste some bourbon, I know I can A, find it, and B, that it's going to be it's going to be solid pour, it's going to be consistent, and
it comes up in all the whiskey groups all the time. I had a bottle and I got down to just a heel of it, and I when I was out doing my tour back in the summer, I left it at my buddy's place. I took it, we pulled it out, I left it on the counter at the end of the night because I only had a little bit left. But it's that one it's
consistent.
It's consistent, and it is always every time I would pull it out, I'm like, damn, this is good whiskey. And even for the Canadian market, like we can get that bottle for about $40.
Wow, that's great for the Canadian.
And if it goes on sale, sometimes you can even get it for like $35, which is like, okay, so I can get like maybe a single barrel, JD, but I could get Wild Turkey 101.
Yeah,
it's
definitely a consistent, and it can hold up to a mixed drink. It can hold up to an ice cube if you want to throw one in there. It's an all around, consistent staple. Yeah.
Totally. If I'm, forgive me, but in a dive bar in Kansas, nothing against Kansas.
No, but
I know, and if I don't trust what the bartender is going to do, I don't want some kind of overly sweet cocktail. I know, just like what you said, Sarah. If I maybe I don't drink it neat that night, I just want a little cube of ice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have a very enjoyable experience, and I find it to be one of my all-time favorites, and it's I like the higher end ones even better from
Wild Turkey across
but that said, that 101 is
I agree with you.
Across the board, anything Wild Turkey, I just I don't know. I like it.
Yeah,
I've had my Long Branch sitting next to me, my Matthew McConaughey Wild Turkey, and I just like
life is good.
I
All
know
right.
it's all about the marketing and all right, but it's Matthew McConaughey in a bottle.
What's
I'm a
not to
girl.
love?
You know what?
I'm a girl. Just tell me it's Matthew McConaughey and I'm good.
And still buy it.
How about you,
So-
Marcia? Yeah. What,
Yeah, Marcia, what about you?
You know, we do so much with bourbon day in and day out and day in and day out that a lot of times, if I am not, I'll go to a good gin and tonic. I sometimes I find that it's funny when we listen to people that are distillers all the time. When they go out, they drink beer. You drink beer, Nancy. Don't. I'm a used to. I know you drink
my own
beer.
beer here at home too. Yeah.
I'll go more. I don't go to the beer. I'll go to a gin and tonic. I'll go to a scotch. I like a number of them, and I like I'll go from Octomore to the Balvenie to to Aberlour.
You're saying all my favorite words there, Marcia. Like,
So
That's a big hitter up in there.
sometimes my palate, it just needs a rest from the same thing all the time, and so always a good Armagnac or a cognac, but just to keep it easy. That gin and tonic, that ice, it's kind of refreshing, and it's a good way for me to take a break from whiskey all the time. Not that I don't like whiskey, but I think that sometimes it's good to taste other things. So I don't mind straying aside.
I gotta know.
I strain.
I think we're maybe asking the same question here,
Marcia?
Sarah. You go first.
Do you use Iron Root gin?
Oh,
Right,
yes, I do. Except right now I have this major problem. Do you know how much Iron Root gin there is?
Not much.
None.
Too much.
Zero, I bet.
Zero.
Zero.
Okay, so I had to slightly.
We're going to get it back again. We used all of our clears, and we sent it out during COVID. Because we didn't make hand sanitizer. We donated the high proof to the hospitals and people that had compounding pharmacies, because we did not have the ability to make it, but we had the ability to help facilitate it, and so that was our choice. So that right now, I think Jonathan finally ran the clears. I said, you answer the phone, Jonathan, and tell that woman why we don't have vodka, gin, and moonshine. And he says,
That's hilarious.
so he says, so he ran the clears, but they're not ready. They're just the first couple of the first distillations. It still has to go to the high proof, but I do like the Iron Root, but I am not opposed to other gins. I started, and you know how we talk about it being emotional. When I was before the distillery, my friends and I, we traveled to Europe, especially during Christmas. And in the old days, when you got on the airplane, they used to give you drinks when you flew overseas, right? And they had all the drinks you wanted, not just the one, all the drinks. And we would drink gin and tonic. So it also, when you talk about it being emotional, I remember good times in gin and tonic. As a lot of people my age had really bad experience with gin. That would have been something called,
I heard
something else. I think, what was it? It was, I never to this day have tasted
anti-remover.
No, it was something stupid some schnapps thing when I was peppermint schnapps.
I was going to say, like, so my question was actually going to be, like, if you had a preferred gin, because what people who maybe are in more of the aged spirits, market, is that, among the young spirits, gin is probably the most complex you can get, because it's, maybe there's an akavit or something, but really, like, it's in those unaged or even for moderately aged gins, you can get some really great flavor combinations, because the commercial gins tend to live in a very tight bandwidth of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into the craft market, and all of a sudden it's like, well, wait,
Wonderful
as long
ones.
as you have juniper, you have gin. So what are people doing? There's some really cool ones. I've tried a really interesting black tomato gin,
Ooh.
which is coming from somewhere in Europe, which is really bizarre and cool and tastes great with pomegranate. But there are some really interesting gins out there. So for people who maybe aren't as up on the whole gin thing, do you have a go-to gin for your gin and tonics?
Besides the iron root?
Besides iron root.
Aside from the iron root.
I have a number of I think that Still Austin is putting out some good gins that I've been and Treaty Oak is putting out. So I like a lot of the craft gins. I'm not. I look at, there's a few things that are not my favorite in as far as the vegetable or whatever they choose to put in it. Maybe like I'm not a cucumber person, and so that one wouldn't be. I've tasted. They're great gins, but they're not my flavor profile as much. I like the ones a little more citrus forward with it. And I don't mind the juniper a little heavier. Some people like it a lot lighter, but I think that sometimes it's also the tonic you put with it. And I love the Fever Tree tonics with it. And I think that those help make a really good gin with it.
The Double Dutch are also, which I know don't have as much distribution as Fever Tree, but in that sort of same vein with those craft tonics, change things up a different way. Yeah.
I have to admit, I love gin and tonic too. I'm like Marcia in that regard. Sometimes it's just you just want to totally get away with whiskey when you've been working with it for every single day. I might be a little bit more traditional. I really like that London Dry style. So, God, I mean that I'm a little embarrassed to say this.
Tanqueray.
Yes, I do. You know what? It's solid. I can go anywhere, and I know
Tanqueray,
the gin and tonic. And it's. I wouldn't say it's my favorite gin, but I know I can go anywhere, and if I want a gin and tonic, that's what I can find, and it's going to be solid, and I'm going to have a good evening out. Just a quick thing about that I wanted to say about beer is one thing I've found that very malty beers that often. One thing that we do at the end in the industry at the end of the day, me and some other people I know that kind of when you want to clean your palate, a good malty beer, it's not too high proof, is a really good way to strip those tannins off of your palate.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and that's why I think as Marcia was saying, a lot of people in our industry like to, distillers or blenders like to drink beer at the end of the day. Is it's getting away from whiskey. If you've had 100 or 200 barrels that day, the last thing you want is more whiskey. It's
right.
But it actually kind of helps strip the tannins off your palate and kind of reset your palate back to zero again.
That kind of makes sense, because I mean, for people who are maybe not into the whole production of whiskey, they may not know that whiskey basically starts as beer and it's just distilled. It's just so the preservative nature is that beer uses hops and whiskey uses distillation. And so that's really the only difference between whiskey and beer is their preservative nature, essentially. So I mean,
proof.
Proof. So I mean, it ends up coming down to how do you what does the ABV end up being? But essentially it's, you're starting, whiskey starts with a distiller's beer that
Right.
just doesn't have hops in it.
Yeah. And a good malty beer will, I mean, you should try it sometime, if you've had a lot of whiskey and, something with a lot of tannin in it, and you just really want to clean your palate, you maybe have a little beer with some aged cheddar will just really the proteins and the cheese will also help take the tannins off and kind of clean your palate. But beer and cheese, I love it.
That's why I like those.
Sounds good to me.
I'm not a beer person on any level, but
I used to be a beer person.
tell me anything with cheese, and I'm like, I'm there for the cheese.
It's good for cheese. So Erica's camera battery keeps dying.
Oh no!
She's gonna have to nip out.
Well, I mean, we are getting close to the 2-hour mark, so
I never answered your question, Theresa.
Oh, what was your? The question.
I slipped a question in there, and
then you forgot to
went
come
off
back
on another
to you.
conversation.
So
But I never answered what my, limit and what do I look for,
your
et cetera.
thresholds and preferences for. Yeah, what's your whiskey buying look like? What's your top dollar kind of what goes into that?
So I can start off flat by saying if it's old Cooley juice, I'll pay what I have to pay. So if anybody knows me, and I know there's several people in the chat that know me, but if it's old Cooley juice in a bottle and I have access to get it, I'm going to find a way to buy it. Proving, I mean,
the kid's college fund.
Kid doesn't need to go to college. Who needs to go to college these days? He's 7. We have plenty of time to build up that. When we were in alcohol, one of the other YouTube channels went over to Total Wine, and they had a Teeling 14-year cask strength, and it's 14-year-old Teeling. That's Cooley juice. Just age gives that away, and I am thank you, Donald Rance. I'll say that. I'm a sucker for old Cooley juice. So he was like, there's one left. And I said, let's go. We went over to Total Wine and we picked that up. Then somebody said, oh, I saw a 15-year over at Specs. And I said, let's go.
So what you're saying is I need to bring you a bottle of the single cask Cooley Teeling Armagnac.
Yes, because I have both of the sherry finishes now. I've got the PX and the Oloroso.
Oh my God.
The
One of our local stores has an Armagnac cask that they released this year, 15-year.
Yes,
really?
Please. Yes, please. I will get you Iron Roots in the equivalent of the tea.
And I will talk to my roommate. My roommate has their 16-year-old Teeling from last year.
Killing me, small.
Single cask.
Yeah. Both of these are single cask. One is in Oloroso and one is in PX. So I haven't opened the 15-year yet, but the tropical fruit and the coconut and just the berries that come off those sherry finishes. It's just that's my love language.
I'll do you a deal. You get me you get me a bottle of Iron Root that maybe won't be available when and if I ever get back to Texas, and I will find a way to get you a bottle of 15-year-old Teeling that was aged in an Armagnac cask with a Teeling that is 16 years old. That one will only be a sample size, but I could probably get you that.
Deal.
All right,
you have yourself a deal. But
okay,
yeah, thanks to trying a lot of the older Irish whiskeys, that's kind of been my don't really care what it costs at this point. I kind of just want it type of situation. But as for everything else, it just depends on what it is. I'm very high proof, cask strength oriented when it comes to my bourbons. my scotches. I don't like peat, so it really has to get me Compass Box. I'm a big fan of Compass Box, so that's one that the price is not a huge factor, especially if I've had it and I know rye. We don't even talk about rye around here. And the peat is all my husband, so it's really just his judgment on that as far as what he thinks he feels we should throw down on a bottle for that. But my heart lately has been with the Irish. I've been with the Irish.
No Irish.
Did you taste the Irish, Sarah?
Huh?
Did you get to taste the Celt at down at
Colorado?
No, the Celt that we have that we're releasing Wednesday.
No.
We had it down at the Crowded Barrel.
Yeah, and because we had a YouTube table, I was the one that was stuck at the YouTube table the majority of the time. So
the 94 proof is the one the Celt is releasing on Wednesday, but on St. Patrick's Day we will release the 104. The 160. What did I say it was? 106. I think. 106,
yeah,
a little bit higher.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Nancy. Oh, we got some stuff for you to taste, Nancy.
Oh, I can't wait.
Is that going to Total Wines in the area? Or is that going to be a distillery only?
Oh my God.
No, it goes out, but contact Robert because it goes to specifically, I think they have a one liquor store in Dallas that I think that it goes to. But Robert knows that better than I do. So text him and ask him where the Celt is going. It left the building Friday, so it should be out this week. But that's
Okay,
94 proof.
Hey, friend.
I just found out Crowded Barrel needs a distiller. Maybe I should move to Texas.
Do it.
I could learn distilling. I swear I could learn distilling.
Well,
okay. Either that or y'all need to start shipping Iron Root to Canada because we don't like missing out. We're kind of close. We have this whole thing called Nashville North at the Calgary Stampede.
I grew up in Butte, Montana, and we were the Calgary Stampede and the rodeos were always the same weekend, and it was always the same cowboys from Montana to Calgary.
I'm not gonna lie, I just sent Robert a message, so
that one's
okay. So I will see if I can get you that Teeling Amrut and Teeling Armagnac cask, and if I can get that, y'all need to get me the Celt. Like seriously, I'm
done.
Oh, okay. I will let you know. I have to go to the store. I'll see if I can still get it.
With you with some cats. I mean some straight from the barrel cigar blend.
With who?
With who?
It's really interesting that Teeling the Armagnac finish.
You'd be interested in that for
that? Actually, the Celt. I mean, I'm really intrigued.
All right, we need to find a time when I will be in Texas. We'll just everybody will get there at the same time, and
the Iron Root.
It'll be a thing. So Sarah,
yes.
we need to tell Daniel that you are when you do level 3. When you do level 3, I have to come down and do the hosting thing, and we have to have Nancy come in from out of town, and we'll have to meet up with Marcia, and we're all staying at your place. So get an air mattress, and we're all going to bring whiskeys, and we're going to have fun.
That sounds like a blast to me. I've got a futon for you to sleep on, or I've got a giant couch. I mean,
okay.
Let's do it.
I also take an air mattress from Walmart for like $40. So, we
whatever.
Dude,
I will send the kid to grandma's, and you can sleep in his bed.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been going for like 2 hours at this point.
I think it's an early morning tomorrow.
I will
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
I've got
Yeah.
early morning.
I would love to keep going. It's still early-ish for me. It's even earlier for Nancy, so she's probably
Well,
like, whatever.
I need to
But-
have dinner, and I've got an early morning. Yeah.
All right.
We'll
So-
just have to have you ladies back on again because it's been wonderful just talking with you. I mean, not just about what you do in the business, and just chit-chatting in general about what you like and whiskey in general because
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we like whiskey. We're
And we
part
like
of that.
Good times with good friends.
Yeah,
Nice to meet y'all again.
it's fun chatting with other women, that are, into, what we're all into, and
And that's exactly why we started
it's
this
a cool
channel.
thing to do. Yeah.
And I mean, we don't just, run the world. We run the whiskey industry and have been for years. So, yeah. We wanted a place where we could have people come on that were in the industry or, big into whiskey in general, enjoyed whiskey to talk about, because I don't think it happens enough in general. And one of the things, like what Chris had said when we were at Still Austin, you had mentioned to him that nobody's even going to know it was me. And he was like, well, yeah, they are. Yeah. They need to know that women are doing these things in this industry and they need to know it. And
I think that Iron Root was one of the first that really Nancy was surprised when we said, well, why not? I mean,
Right.
most up until that time, you were always behind the scenes.
you need to be in front of the scenes.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing when I think that we got started, and with when I met Robert, and that it was 2013.
Yeah.
I mean, can you believe it was that long ago? I mean, that's it's going
Times
to be
were different then, weren't they, Nancy?
years before you know it. It's
Well, and then 2020 lasted 5 years, so it's a long time. Can't forget
God,
that.
let's not go there again.
Please
Well,
no.
I'm going to sign off and see you guys another time.
Thank you,
Good night.
Marcia. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank
if you want to stick around.
out.
Thank
Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out. And until next time, come check us out in November, and we'll have you ladies on again.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Angela.
Good night.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Oh, and for November we have Heather from Cocktail Contessa and Bourbon Women. So
Oh, awesome.
last Sunday of the month.
You guys gonna hang around here for a second?
Yeah, we'll hang around, just stay on after we close the.
For a second.
Donald
I'm
was
gonna go
putting
ahead
all
and end
the
it right now.
links, so
I must relieve my bladder.
fair enough.
I'm like,
All right, we'll
I mean,
turn off
like-
the live.